to part 2 of this code lab on Jetpack Compose. In the previous code lab in part 1, we implemented the basic screens for the Unicorn app. This includes the Unicorn app login screen and the Unicorn app sign up screen. And in this part, we're going to fix the navigation that we have here. So this navigation needs to be using compose destinations instead of using the Jetpack compose navigation. Now let's look at the difference between compose destinations and Jetpack compose navigation. So Jetpack compose navigation, or Jetpack compose destinations, I'm sorry, is the open source KSP library. So it says here that it's by Rafael Acosta, and it's a KSP library that processes annotations and generates code that uses the official compose navigation under the hood, and it hides the complex non-type safe boilerplate code you would have to write otherwise. So we want to try to use that, and here it's using type safe navigational arguments. It has a simple configurable navigation graph, and it navigates with a simple type safe manner. So we have animations. There are bottom sheet screens with integration with the components navigation material, which we'll take a look at later. Then we have the easy deep linking and Wear OS support. So it's got a lot of features. And then there are some videos here which we can take a look at later. So let's see how we can compose or convert our current project to composables for the compose destinations library. So let's first take a look at installation, and in the installation steps we have via build.gradle for the module. So we need this KSP line here. So let's look at that. So if we go to build.gradle for the app module, which is this one, and we search for compose destinations. So we don't have compose destinations, but we have our compose navigation down here. So let's see if we have this line. We probably don't. Let's search for this. So we don't, and what we need to do is add the line, but we need to figure out which version of Kotlin we have first. So let's take a look at which version of Kotlin we have. So in our build.gradle on the top level for the project, we have our compose version here and our Kotlin version here. So we have Kotlin version 1.8.20. Now we have to figure out which version of the KSP plugin for compose destinations we need based on 1.8.20 version of Kotlin. So let's look at this releases section, and I'll close this tab for now. So we'll search here for the Kotlin version 1.8.20. So let's take a look at Kotlin version 1.8.20, and here it says that 1.0.11 is the current latest version corresponding to 1.8.20 version of Kotlin. Of course, there are older versions like 1.0.10 and probably older versions like this one, but the most recent one is 1.0.11, corresponding to Kotlin version 1.8.20. So we go back here and we go to our build.gradle for the app folder module, and we go to the GitHub for compose destinations, which is I'll put the link in the description, and we can basically just copy this line under plugins, and this has to go under the plugin scope. So here under plugins we put 1.8.20, 1.0.11. Now we hit sync now, and let's take a look while it's syncing to see what else we need to do. So here is the same thing for the KTS build.gradle, which we don't have a KTS build.gradle with our project right now, but we have to add the dependencies. So let's take a look at how we add the dependencies. So here we have these two lines, which are the dependencies. So let's create a section down here called compose destinations, and we need to figure out which version of the compose destinations we need to add. So in order to figure that out, what we can do is figure out using the GitHub which was the version that was released most recently. So in order to do that, we go to releases here, and you can see here it says 1.9.54. So if we go down here and we say create a variable called compose destinations version, and we say 1.9.54, and in this section we can add that variable with a $sign, compose destinations version, and we can make this a double quotes just to help that along. So we make this double quotes, make this compose destinations version, and we hit sync now. So that should now give us the compose destinations library, and let's see how we can integrate it. So once the sync is done, let's do a quick build to check that it still builds. So clean rebuild project, and while it's rebuilding, we can just go back to the documentation and check what is the usage for this library. So the usage basically says that we need to build the project using ./gradlew, which is Gradle wrapper, KSP debug Kotlin, and that'll generate the destination files for the each screen. So if you have a profile screen, it'll generate profile screen destination as long as we annotate it with @destination. And we can also put arguments in the constructor. So each argument can have a type. So we have ID int type, group name string optional type, and is owner Boolean type. So we can go ahead and do the build step now. So let's copy this command and do the build step on the terminal. So that was successful, and now we can go ahead and put add destination on our screen for the screen which goes which loads after the landing screen, which in this case is the main screen. So let's go into the main screen and we add destination here. Now we have to import the add destination annotation class, and once that's added, we run the Gradle command again. Now it's saying that the Gradle command failed. So let's take a look at, so it's saying use argument start equals true in the destination annotation of the root nav graph start destination. So in this case, the start destination for the root would be the landing screen. So here we can put add destination and import that, and we can also put start equals true with add root nav graph annotation at the top of that. And now if we import root nav graph, we should have effectively these builds working. So that worked. Let's do a clean rebuild again. Now one thing you'll notice about the classes for destination is that instead of using nav controller, this uses navigator, which is a destinations navigator. So let's see how we can integrate that. So in our landing screen, we have the nav controller being passed into the landing screen currently. So if we comment that and we say navigator, which is a destination navigator, then what we get is effectively what we need, which is we get to have this sort of a syntax for navigation. So let's see how we can call the navigator using that call. We can actually do that in a few ways. So here it says that destinations nav host with nav graph equals navgraphs.root is a way to add the nav host call, which means navgraphs is a generated file that describes the navigation graphs and the destinations, and all destinations will belong to root by default, but we can create our own nav graphs. So navgraphs dot root is how we do that, but let's take a look at that after we get navigation working. So here the way we call this would be, let's see, taking a look at the documentation. So here it says, let's take a look at this one. It says call profile screen destination with the arguments, right? So that should be pretty simple. In our landing screen, instead of going to this thing. So let's do this. Let's keep our nav controller here for now. We'll take it one step at a time, and the nav controller is being initialized in the main activity, I believe. So here is where it's being initialized and it's being passed into the root nav graph. So in fact, this wouldn't be needed once we have everything migrated over to compose destinations. So what we would do is effectively, let's see, this has nav host, and this would do the thing that we were doing with the call here. So let's try that, and we'll comment out that, and let's import this function. And here it's saying it needs to resolve nav graphs. So let's see how we can resolve that. That's a generated file. And so let's rebuild this. So while we're working on this, let's keep our original nav graph alive, and we'll go to landing screen, and we'll call our navigation command, which is navigate. We'll call it in the button which is pressed in the landing screen. So let's go to the get started button, which is this one, and here we can see we're calling navcontroller.navigate. So this can be changed to what we have up here, which is navigator.navigate, and instead of going to the home screen, it can go to main screen destination. So that's where it's going to go now. Now it's going to say we need to import the main screen destination. Hopefully that'll work, and it doesn't take any parameters, so we can keep an empty, we can put a empty constructor here, and that's the navigate command instead of the nav controller command. So let's run this. And here it's saying nav controller, no value passed for navigator. So here we can pass navigator. So basically we can't call setup root nav graph in the main activity because it wouldn't work the same way without a nav controller. And let's see if this will work. So it's again saying that our landing screen needs the navigator. So how do we put the navigator in here? And the way we could do this is, let's not have the landing screen in our setup function. So let's rebuild that. And run. So I think what's happening here right now is that it didn't know which screen is the base screen to load when it entered the main activity. So let's take a look at how we would fix that. And so what we could do is just call setup root nav graph here and run it. And let's do a clean rebuild instead of incremental. So it should run. And it's saying there's an error. So let's take a look at logcat. And it's saying navigation destination landing screen is not a direct child of this nav graph, which means that our navigation landing screen should be part of the nav graph. So let's quickly take a look at the documentation. Here it says we need to add the nav host call, and in order to have the nav host call, we need to have our root nav graph here. So let's do this call. Which we have here. And the reason it's saying, okay, so now it should have imported it. Let's do a clean rebuild. And rebuild. So let's debug that. And we can check if login works. So login is not working because we had forgotten to put add destinations on the login screen here. So we can easily do that. Just like we did add destination for the main screen. And we can import add destination for the login screen, and also we can do the same for the registration screen. So now that we have both login screen and the destination screen or the registration screen are actually annotated with the compose destination KSP library. So we can just import these and let's rebuild. I generally prefer to do a clean rebuild because sometimes you get the artifacts from the old build in the incremental builds, so it's always better to do a clean rebuild. Here it's saying that the add destination library or annotation was not imported in registration screen, and now we imported the annotation. So here we have that annotation. Now let's do a clean rebuild. And let's run it. And let's go to login. That's working. Let's go to sign up. That's working. Let's go to get started. So it did load this thing, and if we go to home, there's a crash. So let's debug that. So it's saying that the destination is not found in the navigation graph, and again that's because we didn't annotate the home screen and the contact screen with that destination. So let's go ahead and do that. Add destination for this and add destination for the contact screen as well. And let's also make sure that the imports are in both home screen and contact screen, and also in the notification screen. So let's annotate all three. And the best part about KSP annotations is that it essentially uses the annotation to generate the classes using KSP symbol processing. So let's clean the project and rebuild. And let's run it. We can hide that. So now let's test login. That's working. Let's test sign up. That's working. Let's test get started. It opens the navigation drawer. And let's see what happens if we click on contacts. So that's working. Let's see what happens if we click on notifications. So that's working. So we got this to work. And in the next part, we're going to improve how this drawer works. But thanks for watching. See you in the next part. Thanks.